high ticket. I want to know about high ticket. What does that mean to you?
So think about like a Venn diagram, and you've got maybe an expertise you have here, and an expertise you have here, and an expertise you have here. And if you can find like the intersection of all of those, you become super unique.
It's important to get paid. Otherwise, you might have to give up coaching.
You just got to do the work.
If you're at the early stage of your coaching journey, you don't have a lot of experience or confidence, you have to build that confidence. And the confidence comes from actually doing the work. So maybe it's doing a bunch of free stuff. Free is the doorway to paid, and paid is the doorway to higher paid, right? And higher paid is the doorway to even higher paid.
To niche or to not to niche. What's up, Coaches Nation? This is Dr. Sherry for another amazing episode of the Coach's Journey podcast, here with my amazing co-host, Daniel Fernandez. And we're going to talk about and unpack for you today our thoughts around one of the biggest questions that we get from newer coaches and more seasoned coaches. And it is this: how do you find and create and get some seriously high-paying clients? I've never heard anybody ask, how do I get more freebies? How do I get more free clients? Or how do I get more clients that pay like just a itty bitty amount? Nobody ever asks that. They're always asking, how do I get higher paying clients? How do I get, high ticket clients? So we're going to talk a little bit about what our experiences has been on that, around what we're seeing in our coaching mastery community, and giving you some super actionable ideas that you can then take to your own coaching practice. I'm excited for this, Daniel.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm really excited. And I like the way you described that, because it's true. There are some people who's like, how do I just get anybody, which is really early in the journey, and they'll do it for free, and that's fine. And then there's an art to that too. Most of the people in our community are past the point where they're like, I'll take anybody. They want to actually get paid, right?
Yes.
And that's not to say that if you're in our community, you won't do freebies and those kinds of things because you want to, but ideally you're getting paid to do that work, right? Because I always say it's got to be mutually beneficial, right? And sometimes the benefit is experience for you, but sometimes the benefit is money.
Absolutely.
Right? Where are you at in that journey? So I love that, Sherry. Thank you for introducing it so well.
Absolutely. And honestly, I just want to, I've done this before, where there are certain people that I want to work with who can't afford my traditional services, what I normally do. And I like reserving a portion of my time to be service oriented, to be, a charity, like in my taxes, it's called charity. And so I give up my money, but how about my time too? So I know there's others of you out there that have a similar mindset. The cool thing is, if you can improve your ability to find and secure working with clients who do pay higher, you can then have more financial freedom to work with those that can't afford you. So it's not that you're becoming this fancy schmancy, exclusive coach that will only talk to people that have a 7-figure net worth. Like if that feels icky to you, that's not necessarily what we're saying. It can be a both and scenario, so that you can have the people that can afford, that can help offset you working with those that can't. So if that was a thought that entered your mind, I hope that gave you a different perspective.
Love that, Sherry. And actually, if you think of, like, if you do an example of the numbers, let's say you need, let's pick up random numbers here. If you need 80,000 to live your lifestyle, and you had one, let's say $100,000 client, could you serve a lot more people for free if you wanted to? Yes. Right? If you have only 0 clients that pay you, then you're gonna have a hard time meeting your lifestyle goals, and it's gonna be hard to build a business while you're trying to struggle to survive. If you have 2 $10,000 clients this year for your $80,000, you're still going to struggle, right? So it's important to get paid. Otherwise, you might have to give up coaching. And what, Sherry and I want to remind you is coaching is a long-term career path that you can take. And if you want to do it as a hobby, that's very different, right? So if you're doing it as a hobby, some of these things might be applicable to you. But if you want it as a career, you got to think about how you're going to sustain it. And that's true of every career, right? It's sustainable because you get paid to do that career. A lot of times, like if you're independently wealthy, you can still build a coaching career. You won't have as urgent a need, but you might have the same questions. And how do you make money doing it too is going to be less important to you potentially, but it could still be pretty important because there's also the personal reward that you get from being paid for what you do. So, I mean, we can talk about that all day long, but like to me, like the question of high ticket offers, we're talking about the why. Why do high ticket offers matter? And high ticket can mean something different. For some people, it's 10,000. For some people, it's 3,000. But I think generally when we're talking about high ticket, it's like in the thousands per package, right? At the minimum, right? Like 1,000, I wouldn't call that high ticket personally, but some people might consider that pretty high ticket. I would say like 3,000 plus would be to my minimum definition of high ticket when we're talking about here. Sherry, what about you?
My minimum definition, I would say, is probably more 5 or really more like 10,000. But I think that's a great point that people have different definitions. And, maybe so when I sell, I'm working with people for a year. And so I guess if somebody's doing 3 months and they're selling for, 3,000, then if they did a full year, then it would be what I would consider high ticket. So my perception is it's going to
Yeah.
be double digit, and it's at least for a year. At least that's how I work my business. But yeah, I mean, so just think about it, and maybe a way to frame it is not how do I get high ticket clients, but how do I get higher ticket clients than where you're at
Yes.
currently?
Yes, I love that, Sherry. Yeah, so there's lots of different ways to think about this, and thank you for pointing out, like, it's all relative to what is the program and what you charge and what people consider high ticket. For me, yeah, I usually I don't sell $3,000 programs anymore. I sell five-digit programs, but it's all definitional. So what is high ticket? And like as we talk about that, I want you to think about like, ooh, high ticket. Some of you are listening to this because you're like, high ticket. I want to know about high ticket. What does that mean to you? Right? What does high ticket mean to you, and why is that important for you? Is a good question for you to think about, right?
Yeah.
Because to me, it's not actually about the high ticket as much as it is the high impact and commitment that the client is making, right? So I'm going to sell for high ticket. It's not only because that's the rate that I'm selling it at, but the thing I care about more than the ticket price is actually the value and the commitment that the client's making and the time period and all that. So because I recently had a potential client who really couldn't afford my services, and we talked about like what could we do. Sometimes I like to say like, oh, what would make sense for you, and we can like work out I kind of worked out a deal where it's like, here's the cutting the edge of what I'm willing to do, and here's what they're willing to do, but I'm not so sure that I want to do that. And so like I've been thinking about like, do I say no to this client? And I think I'm actually going to say no to this client, because even though it's a multi-$1,000 program, it's just not, I don't feel like I have the full commitment I need. And I don't think I'm going to be able to make the impact at that for the program that we designed.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I've been thinking about over the last few days since talking to them. So to me, that is like, it's not valuable enough and they're not committed enough. So I'm going to say no to that one as an example, right? So like, to me, I know more what I want just because it's just money in the bank, but no, that's not enough to make, like, I'm going to struggle through that if that's just money in the bank to me.
Yeah, I love that. So Daniel, when you think about your own high ticket coaching, what do you think had to change in your mindset or behaviors for you to shift into that space when you think about like the history of your own coaching journey?
Oh my gosh. I think so. I want everybody to say, like, today, if you don't have a lot of confidence or experience in coaching, it's going to be a lot harder for you to charge high ticket for coaching. Think about what you do have experience and expertise in. That might allow you to offer programs that are specific and based on your strengths, and you may be able to have more confidence in selling that. But just general coaching and transformational coaching, which is what we talk about a lot, at the beginning, like, I wanted to charge high ticket, but I failed at that because, number one, I didn't have the confidence. I didn't believe the value was there. And to be truly honest, like, it wasn't. I wasn't a very good coach. I had a certification and I was like, oh, I'm so good now. But the truth is I hadn't had enough experience. I hadn't had enough practice to charge, those higher ticket programs. Even like a couple $1,000s was high for me at the time. And so like, it's going to take, I want people to understand, if you're at the early stage of your coaching journey, you don't have a lot of experience or confidence, you have to build that confidence. And the confidence comes from actually doing the work. So maybe it's doing a bunch of free stuff. Free is the doorway to paid, and paid is the doorway to higher paid, right? And higher paid is the doorway to even higher paid. So there's a progression that I want you all to respect in your life, your journey about how much you charge, the pricing journey. And that was my experience, right? It's like, I actually need to reduce my prices in my mind so that I could get the clients, and so I could build the confidence and help them and see the impact. The thing that helped me raise my prices the most was actually noticing how much farther the coaching went for the client, and them saying things like, yes, I want to renew, or yes, that was amazing. I went and did that and it totally changed my life, and seeing the results over a long period of time, like over 6 months. I used to coach for like, a couple sessions or 3 months. And then I realized like, I really want 6 months plus. And even 6 months, that's like Sherry's out to a year. Generally, I prefer a year, right? So I'm actually in the process of transitioning from 6 months to a year. And I think the longer you stay in coaching, the more you realize, like, to get transformational effects, the longer the commitment, the better for the results. Like in 3 months, I can do so much, but in 6 months, I can do more than double with people. And so a lot of it is about building that confidence experience from your history of coaching, which means you got to get coaching, coach as much as you can, and figure out what's working, what's not working, who you like to work with, who you hate to work with, and like build on those successes to raise your ticket prices. And that will take you to high ticket. So that's number one, time. And part of that is practice your art, practice understanding the impact of what you do. And ask the clients, like, what was valuable to you? Ask them. They'll tell you, and they'll tell you why. And that can inform you, right? So that's what I say. How about you, Sherry? I'd like you to answer the same question.
Yeah, I love that. What I've noticed for myself is one of the things that has allowed me to position myself better than some other coaches is my perceived authority. And that authority, part of it comes with my letters after my name. So I have a doctorate in psychology. And so there's an assumption there of a level of expertise and experience, which I didn't harness it at the beginning of my transition from the traditional psychologist world into coaching. I totally did not harness that. And I had people other coaches being like, what the heck? If I had, so I learned probably within that first year of like, oh, I need to harness that. But also, not only just that like static credential, but a lot of those that I work with are people that know me as an expertise, kind of combining two things. So think about like a Venn diagram, and you've got maybe an expertise you have here, and an expertise you have here, and an expertise you have here. And if you can find like the intersection of all of those, you become super unique. You become like the person that is the most obvious solution when other people also have a similar constellation of interests. And so that's what I've harnessed is I've got some desires and interests that I myself have involved in. And so then I find those other people that have very similar constellation, and layer on that now that I'm a coach in those unique areas. And they're like, well, of course you're the most obvious person because you know this and this, and most coaches don't know both or all three, so that authority is one of the things that I've noticed help elevate my though those aspects have helped elevate my authority, which gives me a little bit more kind of some assumed trust on the onset of a relationship.
That is awesome, Sherry. I love that. And it reminds me of something that I've been learning more about, but also something I think I figured out myself. Is that coaching has kind of shifted for me over the last decade. At first, I started as a pure coach. It was I was like, oh, I need to coach, which I still think everybody needs to learn those skills and do that. But over time, I realized that it wasn't just the coaching skills that mattered to the clients. A lot of the time, what matters is your life experiences and your ability to navigate. And as Rich Lippman said, you can't take anybody deeper than you've been willing to go yourself. And so having been through adversity and having been through unique challenges, like entrepreneurs, like have a very particular set of life challenges, and especially people who have had multiple businesses, that's something I can relate to. And I've been down deep into that journey. So I'm not going to be blind to some of those challenges. Or people who have experienced death, right? People who've had like really hard, challenging relationships. There's like people, I can relate to people on all these levels. And so the quality of your experience, I want to say even the quality of your adversity and your learning and your depth of experience can be a really powerful part of your coaching. And I think sometimes we forget that. It's like, as a coach, you want to just like focus on your client, but sometimes your client needs to hear from you about your experiences and needs to hear from you that you are not blind to what they're going through. And not only are you not blind, but you have had those experiences or similar enough experiences that you have some depth to add to the coaching there. Not saying you tell them what to do, or you tell them your answer, or only tell you stories about your life. You got to keep it relevant, right? But that's part of it. And then the other part is kind of like what I've evolved into, which is a little bit of consulting. I would call it consulting or brainstorming or ideation or even like advising, right? There's a mentoring and advising component, I think, that has come out in my coaching over the long term, which I find that probably has happened because in coaching, in pure coaching, you want to be like, okay, well, what do you think? You tell me. And I love doing that first. It's like, I know like there's like 3 or 4 solutions I can provide here. I'm like, well, you tell me. And they're like, I got nothing. I'm like, in my old world, I'd be like, well, what if you had something? What would it be? And I'd be like, well, what would your dad say? Or what would your find? And you can pull out ideas, but I think the speed of that can oftentimes take so long that they may never get there. And you can sometimes see they're spinning around. And I think I realized one time, it's like, would you like a suggestion? And they're like, yes, please give me a suggestion. Why'd you make me suffer for so long? Do that. And so I said, like, dude, mate, what if you did this? And they're like, oh, it's so obvious now. I'm like, okay. So I learned, like, over time, this happened over and over again. It's okay to like go from pure coaching to like, and I consider that coaching, to be honest, to like slightly advising. And sometimes now I'm like, I don't even ask, like, if we had that relationship over like, a year, we've built up that like back and forth. And I'm like, I have a suggestion for you. What if you did this? And like, that's dependent on the relationship to me. At what point you like just tell them what you think. And I think for coaches at the high ticket level, you got to be able to tell them what you think sometimes, right? And maybe even more than sometimes, because that's what they're paying you for too, is your perspective. And they're paying for some of those ways that you're going to challenge them, right? Brendan says you're paid to push, which is so true, right? And so I do push them, and I sometimes don't wait that long. And that's also a style thing, right? Like, it depends on what you're trying to do. And so the consultative piece of it, the experiential of your life piece of it, and how you communicate those things, and the coaching part of it, it's all going together. To me, it's like kind of becoming this thing. And things what I'm working on right now. We should talk about niching, because for me, like, I'm working on how do I bring this all together and make a niche or an avatar out of it. And what is the Venn diagram for Daniel? I know, Sherry, you've done some of this work for yourself, and you're probably still evolving it. But for coaches out there, like, let's talk about when do you niche and when do you not niche.
I love it. To niche or to not to niche? That is
a question.
Right. And it's interesting. So we had this conversation about niching, Daniel, myself, and Faisal, who is also another co-host that you have listened to before on this podcast. We were literally talking about this exact topic just a couple hours ago. And there's this general perspective that we've developed based on our own experience and based on a lot of the members in the Coaching Mastery community. And that is, don't worry about niching when you're just starting out coaching. And niching might really become more important when you start to do some more broader marketing. Now, you may have a different perspective, and that's totally fine. And if you do, we'd love to hear about it. But what comes behind my statement here is that what we see is coaches jumping into the coaching space from another job, another career, or maybe they're adding this to it. And they're like, okay, now I need to get my copy done for my website and all of these things. And I need to be so eloquent and so specific and so perfect in how I present all of the things around my coaching, that they spend so much time trying to get all of that stuff done that they don't then do the most effective, but the most challenging work of reaching out and having conversations. And initially, with what we teach in Coaching Mastery community, is the first step when you're really starting to get your coaching business going is you're working with your warm leads. You're working with your sphere of influence. You're working with the people that are already in your network, that already know your name or your face, and you're having conversations. And maybe, so I live in the real estate world. And so maybe if you were like me, or even more specific, like everybody that you know is in real estate. Okay, well then maybe you act, you kind of are starting in a niche potentially. But what if they're not? You just reach out to everybody and see what comes up, see who you can get to be clients because you can serve them. And through the process of serving a lot of people, that starts to give you information about how you can then formulate who you really like working with and who you can really help. There are certain people that I've realized, oh my gosh, that was so draining. I don't ever want to work with that issue or that personality style or whatever. I don't ever want to do that again. Well, I would never have known that if I had niched down super, super tight in the beginning. Or maybe I would have, but it kind of would have taken a while for things to pick up. So when not to niche, from my perspective, it's when you're in the beginning because you just need clients. You just need experience. Going back to what Daniel said at the beginning of all of this, it's time so I was in the military, we call it time in grade. Time in grade. Like the longer you're in the military, you're just doing your time, you're doing the things, you're going to progress. You're going to make rank. Same thing with coaching. You just got to do the work and it will come. But if you're too specific, you're like, oh, they're not. Well, they're not. Well, they're not. Well, they're not. Well, you just lost opportunities to do the work. So that's the perspective around not niching when you're newer, when you're in the beginning.
I love everything you said, Sherry. I think there's so much truth to that. And I want you to think, like, if people are listening to that, like, yeah, but I don't have any experience and I want to niche now. I'm not saying don't do it, but it really depends. At the beginning of your career, in any career path, like generalize it to, like, if you're not a coach, let's say you were a psychologist, or let's say you were a dentist or whatever, and you wanted to think about, like, what does a career look like over a decade or more? Like I was in manufacturing and IT integration, and my career shifted in ways that I never would have predicted. And I learned a lot of things over that process. And you never know what your experiences are where they're going to take you, and who you're going to meet, and how that's going to shift how you think about it. And so if you have enough data from your own life, you might be able to know exactly where you want to focus. That is possible. So don't discount it, but you probably also need to validate that, right? So if you want to say, like, this is what I do as a beginner, you can do that and, like, find the problems that you can solve for those people that you're talking about, and just go try it. Go do those experiments. But we wanted to say, like, hey, that didn't work out because I didn't realize A, B, C, D, E, and now I'm going to shift again. That's okay. You can also go super general and be like, hey, I'm going to coach a bunch of people to figure out where I want to focus. And I would also like to recognize Sherry's point about, if you have an expertise or a network, you can start your focus there. It doesn't have to be so specific. But at the same time, at some point, you're going to need to get specific, because what we're solving for right now is experience. We're not solving for high ticket in this conversation.
Yes.
To solve for high ticket, you can still do that generally, but you can also leverage a niche or an avatar or whatever, or persona, whatever you want to call it, to target specific people with a specific problem that is valuable, that they'll pay for, right? And so if you get to the place where you're clear and you found this problem, like sometimes when you do a lot of coaching, you're like, oh, this thing keeps on coming up, and these are people that I love working with. That might be a hint for you. Like, once you work on solving that problem, you can develop a thing around that. And then you say, like, I'm the person who does this. Like, so Sherry could say, I'm just gonna make one up for you, Sherry. Sherry,
okay, go for it.
Hey, it might help with your evolution, but maybe not. It might. So I'm gonna say, like, Sherry, you could be like the coach to real estate people who have, like, families who live in, a set of states or region in the US, who have multiple business and an entrepreneurial spouse, who struggle from a very specific set of problems. Like, maybe they are overwhelmed, or maybe that, like, you could pick a problem that they have that is valuable. Whatever it is, like, the more valuable the problem, the better it is. But what I didn't say is, like, Sherry really wants to do this. So let's figure out how to make that happen in the world. Like, you got to think client first instead of coach first. Like, most of my career, like at the first half, I was like, well, what do I like to do? What am I good at? What are my strengths? But, like, I would say the thing I've been really thinking about this year, especially recently, is, like, forget you. It's not about you. My number one rule coaching is, it's not about you. Forget yourself. Think about potential clients, people with problems that you can solve, that you could solve. And once you figure out the valuable problem to solve, then you can think about, like, how can I help there? And even you can say, like, how can I build the skills to solve more there? right? Because your skill set is actually like the least important as you think about value. It is important. I mean, especially if you're not sure where your niche is. But when you do get to a niche or an avatar or persona or whatever it is, the skills are at least not as valuable as you being able to help with that problem.
Yeah.
And them knowing that, right? So
Right.
there's a place and point at which you're niching. I'm working on this right now actively for myself. It's like, should I actively like decide to pursue a particular niche? I think I'm at the point where yes. So the question is how quickly. And this brings up the second challenge, which is one of discipline and habits. If you think you're ready to niche and you don't have the discipline to do the outreach pre-niche, you're probably not also going to have the discipline to do the outreach post-niche. However, with a caveat that, and this is what I'm working through myself right now, having the niche could motivate you in a different way. Because a lot of the time, not knowing who you're talking to, not knowing who to ask people for referrals for, can be resistance. It can be like an uphill climb. You're climbing up the slide. But if you knew that, it'd be so much easier just to tell everybody, hey, this is what I'm focusing on. But then you have to do the inner work to be confident in that, to be committed to that for at least 6 months, maybe 3 to 6 months minimum, and to stay the course on that, because you're gonna run into struggles and frustrations because you won't know how to serve that niche yet, and you're gonna be like, I picked the wrong niche. And so I really think it's important to think about your own, how you're gonna show up, how you have been showing up, and if you haven't been showing up for your non-niche world, then start showing up there. Step one, or raise the game there. And if you have been showing up and you want a niche, keep doing that. But when you re-niche, evaluate for yourself. Is this gonna actually get you moving? Yeah. And you might think it will. And
you will think
wrong.
it will.
What's that?
You will think that re-niching is going to get you moving. And I think that's the challenge. So exactly. It's not that re-niching or niching is, don't do it. Obviously, we're not saying that. There's a lot of value in doing that. But I do want to caution you, as what Daniel was alluding to, is that if you're not actually doing the work that's necessary, we do this all the time. This is like, I have done this a lot of times as an entrepreneur, is that something doesn't seem like it's working. Maybe I'm losing interest in it. If you're ADHD, whatever it is, there is this predictable response that our brain does with novel things, is it creates another level of excitement and interest and energy. And all of that is good. But sometimes we mistake that energy, that new vibrancy with an idea as literally just a new idea is causing that. It's not the right idea. So I just don't want you to confuse this, increased inspiration as meaning you should actually change niches, because it just might be literally your brain reacting to a novel situation and a novel thing. So there is a little more deeper work that needs to happen to make sure that this is really strategically, it makes sense. And so honestly, this is what being in a community like Coaching Mastery Community can be so helpful, because there's other coaches where you can say, hey, this is what's going on. This is how I feel stuck. Or maybe you're not stuck, and that's fine. But this is how I feel like I want to shift or pivot or add something, and get other coaches' perspectives who have been doing this a while, so that they can help you kind of discern, is this really strategically and tactically the right pivot? Or am I just searching for something novel to get my brain stimulated and moving again?
Yes. And so you make me think, Sherry, about what is the bottleneck in your business? And oftentimes we think as coaches that, oh, it's the marketing thing I don't know. It's the niche, it's the program, whatever it is, we tend to gravitate towards the thing that's filling in a gap in our mind. But have we done the work? And that may be true, but it may not be true. So if you look inside and ask yourself the following questions, I'm asking myself these right now. Have you had enough strategy sessions on the calendar, discovery sessions? Have you booked enough calls with people pre-niche? And is the reason for that because you don't have a niche, or is the reason for that your own internal challenges? And this is where you can definitely work with your coach on that if you have one, or work with our community and ask these questions and do the inner work, and help and talk to people and figure out, is the challenge for you one of habit, routine, discipline, outreach? Because if you add marketing on top of that marketing is gonna fail. And you've probably done this. You've probably said I'm gonna do this marketing thing, and then you didn't do it, or it didn't work for you. And so maybe that there's a deeper internal opportunity for you to like really commit to this career path. And I struggle with that sometimes too. Like I have times where my outreach, it just tanks, right? And so I'll be honest, like it goes up and down. And the key is building the habits every day to do that work, to follow up. And coaching is a relationship-based industry. So are you building relationships? Are you having conversations? If you're doing that and you see, after thinking about it deeply enough, that the bottleneck is not having a clear avatar, then that may be something important for you to do. And if the bottleneck is not that, then there's something else important for you to do. Like, where's the constraint? Tell me where the real constraint is. And oftentimes with our coaching business, because it's so personal and so complex, and there's so much we tend to have blind spots on it, it's usually there's an internal constraint that needs to be worked through.
Yeah. Yeah. So such important points. And for me to tie in the niche with the high ticket, I think does seem to be a fairly predictable journey where the more that a person has experience, they start to niche a little bit, and that then is able to justify the higher or be able to get higher ticket coaching clients. And part of that journey is that when you niche down, you can get really more specific about what problem you're solving. What is the deliverable? How are you helping them? And I think about some of the areas in my own life where I feel stuck, and they're pretty specific and pretty niche. And when I hear somebody say, "Oh, I have a solution for that problem," which probably 0.0000001% of the Earth's population has that issue. But because it's my pain point right now, my ears perk up. I'm like, ooh, ooh. And that's what we want with whatever it is that we're delivering, is for somebody to perk up and be like, "Oh, they get me. That's exactly what I need." And I think you do have a more unique opportunity or more refined opportunity to do that when you niche, and then you're able to then charge more because, again, kind of going back to the Venn diagram, you've got all of these things and you're like the one in the middle. And if you can say, "I'm the only one that does this," wow, that's powerful. And again, gives you that level of authority that allows you to be able to charge more, or that gives you the higher likelihood of being able to charge more and having more higher paying clients. So
Higher likelihood is a good word because it doesn't
yes,
guarantee anything.
it
If you
doesn't
don't know
guarantee
how to do
anything.
the pricing and the positioning and the outreach and all that stuff, there's a big piece of the puzzle that you got to do. Your internal worth and self-worth and confidence and all that stuff boils into it. But so going back to our full circle on the definition of high ticket for you, whatever it is, or for me, or for you, Sherry, whatever that is, you probably could charge high ticket for a non-niched offering.
Mm-hmm.
It is certainly possible. I've done it many, many times, and I have people renew, even though I don't have that clear avatar niche at 5 figures plus, right? So, like multiple 5 figures, depending on the time frame, right? So, I feel like if you want high ticket, there's multiple paths available to you. You can actually step up your game, get the experience, capture the impact and the value, and demonstrate like to people how valuable it is, and know that inside, and get that internal confidence up so you can charge more.
Yeah.
And then you'll get to that high ticket place. You can also, at that time or at an earlier time, depending what it is for you, based on what we said today, like, is it the right thing? You can get that niche and be the number one rank in that single. You can create your own niche, or you can like participate in another niche, but become that go-to person. That is another way to raise your ticket prices. But you gotta also do the same work anyway. So might as well do the work. Either way, I'm saying like we gotta just do the work. So.
And there's one additional thing that I just want to add, that I have started thinking about. And so I don't have enough data points to, but this is something that I find fun because I get motivated by creativity, by being able to be creative in the things that I do. I don't like setting a system and having to run the system. I like a system being set and somebody else running the system and me being able to benefit from them. I don't like to be confined to a system. I've learned this about myself. And so So I like having some freedom and creativity, and how that's looked with attracting high ticket clients is being able to offer some unique things that are specific to just them. So for example, it might be me flying out to that. And I did this on one. I will fly out to you for a day, and we're gonna, like, as the beginning of our coaching together, so I can, because it's a huge amount of benefit. One is I get to really understand their environment, how they live their life. I get a really deep dive into them and their problems, so it really kind of fast tracks the rest of the coaching process, and it really results in them feeling like they're cared for, and this is like a big deal. And that's how this person responded, is like they felt very cared for and very, that I was super focused on them, which I was, but it was an experience they probably would not have ever had if we just did the routine meet every week or every other week or whatever on Zoom. So for me, if I'm going to charge a lot of money, if I'm going to, I factor in the time and the expense of the travel and all of that sort of stuff. I'm totally willing to do that because it is more enjoyable for me. And I think it raises the bar on what I deliver and their perception of our relationship. So doing unique things like that. And another thing that I do is I send gifts. Nothing crazy. They're usually anywhere from $30 to $50, and I'll send them 2 to 3 times within a year. And I'll send them a handwritten card of, like, I just appreciate, and some different things. And in fact, one of the coaches in the coaching mastery community, actually, he does this to people that he's talked to or whatever. And so I adopted it, and I'll show you what it is. There are these little cards. They're called thoughtfuls. There's another word for them too, but they're these little cards, little tiny card, and they have different themes to them. So I have a whole bunch of different boxes, and it's got this little, like, perforated thing right here where you, like, they unperforate it, and then they look inside, and it gives them a little, like, saying, like this one says, "You change the world by being yourself." And this is out of the You're Wonderful set. And so these sorts of things, I bought like 10 boxes of these that have different themes. And when I handwrite my card, I'll stick a little something like this in there, and they remember it. And I got that from that was not my idea. I stole that. But things like that, where when people get physical things, this is something I learned from a lot of the years in marketing. I spent learning marketing from Russell Brunson and ClickFunnels, is that when people get physical things, it increases their perception of, or their sense of, what is the word? But their sense of responsibility to maintain the relationship, the reciprocity. It increases their need for reciprocity. So if you give them a gift, even a handwritten card or whatever, they're more likely to give you referrals, because that's their ability to demonstrate reciprocity, and a whole bunch of other things. So those are two specific things. One is like the creativity of what your offer might be, and two is hampering them a little bit with gifts.
I love this, Sherry, and it's kind of went into an unexpected turn, but I just learned a couple of good thoughts from you and ideas on this. But I think what it does is it enhances your credibility and your like mastery of their customer experience. Like, if this is what you're doing, they're gonna have a great experience, right? Make it memorable, make it unique. And I think you probably listen to the same podcast I do on. There was a recent episode that I listened to of, I can't remember his name, but there was an episode he talked about how do you delight your customers, and I've been thinking about that recently, which is like, do something unexpected. Like, I never tell my clients ahead of time of the thing I send them, right? Like, they just get it in the mail, like, what is this? And they open it's beautifully wrapped, and it's, my example is like, often it'll be like a beautiful hand-bound leather journal, handmade. And it's not expensive, but if somebody's signing up for a higher ticket program, I have a little bit of extra budget to do those things, given the price. And so kind of just factor those things in. But I love the idea of adding experiences. Like, somebody told me that they were, as a coach, they were doing experiences where they would meet somebody in a relocation, and they required the person to get there the day before and decompress and do a couple things maybe, and then they would meet them for the day. They would have dinner, and then the next day they would meet, and then that person is required to stay another day, so they have to book 4 days off. I'm like, wow, that actually makes complete sense to me. You spend 2 days together, you get a lot done, you get really deep, and you get really powerful and strategic on their life. And then they're putting themselves into an environment and they pay their way and you pay your way. Like that sounds amazing to me.
Yeah,
Like, so I'm thinking about how can I add these experiences, because like in a coaching session, in a virtual coaching session or in person, there's an experience that is valuable. I don't want to discount the value you can create in the session, but there could be other things that are unexpected that differentiate your value, that make it seem unique, premium, different, which helps you get to those high tickets, right? And
absolutely.
so, and when you sometimes I was doing it at a slightly lower ticket level, and people probably felt, I don't have actually direct feedback a lot, but people always loved them. Like that's
Yeah,
what I do. Like, I don't know how they feel about the pricing and the value, but I feel like just having them love something about what you did is like a good step in the right direction. And also, just as a human to human, it's like you want them to feel great about the commitment they've made, because you're in this to change their life, right? What can
absolutely.
you do to raise that commitment to them for themselves, right?
So
So
I'd love to share just quick
yeah,
one story relates to that, where I was the recipient. I was the one that paid for the high ticket experience, just to continue kind of get people to think. Now, I would, if I were the one to offer this, I would be super selective. It's just that this person had enough time to get to know me and was willing to do this. So my husband and I paid for a day of consulting around our life and our businesses and our finances from a gentleman that has a ton of experience, and we knew that he could be helpful. So we paid for this day of experience, and what it ended up being, so my husband and I flew our expense to Phoenix, and we flew in the night before. The gentleman picked us up from the airport. We went out to dinner, and then we got to stay at his house with him and his wife. We stayed overnight there. We spent the day there the next day, and that full day was when we had that day of consulting with him. And then we went out that evening. We went to dinner. We went to a comedy show. So much fun, just relaxed and had fun. And then the next morning, his wife took me to a yoga, or no, it wasn't yoga. It was a Pilates class, which is super great. And then we ended up flying out that afternoon, and we had some downtime where we were at his house still. He was on Zoom serving his community, and his wife was doing she runs a business, and she was doing her thing. And so we had like 4 hours where my husband and I were at their house, but by ourselves. And we just got to like process and think about the stuff we had just learned. And so for us, that was like, we're super grateful for having been able to kind of be in his life for a little bit and kind of see how that works, because it helped us peer behind the life of somebody that makes a lot more money than we do and has done a lot bigger business things than we have. So it was really, really a cool opportunity that I'm so grateful for. And that is an absolutely unique and creative way of serving.
so you're saying the experience that he created for you was really, really amazing, and it increased the perceived value.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you feel you got more than you put in for the
Yeah.
money.
Oh, totally got more than we put in. And
See,
again, I
that's the
wouldn't.
feeling right there. What you
Yeah,
just did, you're like, oh, I got way more than I paid for. That's the
exactly.
feeling you want to give people.
That is the feeling. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing all that, Sherry. That's super, super helpful to me personally, and I hope to our listeners here today. And this is one of the things we want to remind you: being in touch with coaches who are actively building their business is really important. So we can inspire each other, so we can learn from each other what's working right now, what's not working, what are other people doing, and what's your spin on it? How can you, because the things that Sherry just said that I'm taking away, I'm like, how can I integrate a little bit more of that into my coaching business? So um, thank you, Sherry, for sharing all that. And I appreciate you so much for being part of the podcast and part of our community.
Absolutely. And thank you, Daniel, for sharing your experiences and your vulnerability around where you're at in your business and how you're working at, refining what it is that you're doing so that you can serve at an even higher level and serve more of the types of clients that you know that you can really have a huge impact on. Because I'm going to guess that most of our listeners are also in the position where they know they can do more, they know they can serve at a higher level. It's the question of, how do I make that leap or that baby step? Like, how do I move in that direction? And that's a lot of what our podcast is about, is what are the practical things and mindset shifts that you need to make in order to continue to grow in your income and your impact.
Yeah. And I would say your influence.
Yes.
So if
Influence.
you would like to be part of our community, join us at cmc.coach. And we're looking forward to getting, more voices of more coaches in here with more ideas and more inspiration. So if you're actively building your business right now, maybe you have a W-2 job or a full-time job or a part-time job that is supporting you, but you're building your coaching business, or maybe you already have clients, a few, but you're trying to figure out how to repeat that, then just go to cmc.coach and join us. And we'll be excited to welcome you and to help you. Because every week we do a client getting challenge session of support. We have our podcast. We have a number of ways to support you. So I'd be really excited to see you. If you like this podcast and listen this far, you'd probably be a great fit, and we'd be a great fit for you.
Love it. So have an amazing week, kicking butt, and reaching out for your sales in your coaching business. And we'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, Sherry.
Bye.
Bye.